Good morning, class. Today I'm going to talk about America's war with Spain in 1898. And the first book review I found was 1931 in the New York Times, The Comic Opera War Which Made Us a World Power in the Martial Spirit by Mr. Millis. Reviewed in 1931 by Charles Willis Thompson, who says that the comical affray of a war with Spain needed a biographer, which he had found. According to the book, Mr. Miller says the war was a fraud and a fake, started by Jose Marti in New York and a band of Cubans who claimed that the Cuban Republic needed rescuing from Spanish tyranny. The only problem, Mr. Miller says, there was no Cuban Republic. Mr. Miller says that America had nothing to do after the Civil War except kill Indians, so he decided to start a war with Spain. Enter Hearst and Pulitzer, newspapers which created war hysteria. He says President McKinley was manipulated ultimately into going to war with Spain. But the comic opera goes on, as Mr. Miller says, because the U.S. had no experience fighting a war in the Caribbean. So therefore they had carried out a pointless blockade of Cuba. There was an air of good feeling when Dewey invaded the Philippines, and when the American forces invaded Puerto Rico, the Spanish soldiers welcomed them with open arms. But McKinley said in his reelection, no forcible annexation. That would be criminal aggression. And the second source by W.A. Swanberg, New York Times, 1923, Hearst intended to furnish the Spanish War. It's a letter to the editor. The controversy concerning the Hearst cable to Cuba to his artist, Frederick Remington. And Frederick Remington reported to Hearst, there is no atrocities, no war, I'm coming home. And Hearst supposedly replied, you furnish the pictures and I will furnish the war. James Creelman, who later became a Hearst reporter, brought this to light, and Hearst denied it. Now Swanson, in a 1961 biography of Hearst, says that Hearst was involved in all kinds of intrigues in trying to start the war, including the rescue of Evangelina Cisneros being held by Cubans for trying to free her father. He said the Hearst newspapers created a great hysteria about America refusing to rescue the flower of Cuba. And they even recruited influential women, including Julia Ward Howe, Clara Barton, McKinley's mother, and even Pope Leo XIII to intercede, to force America to intercede. Cisneros was eventually freed by two Hearst reporters in a bribe, and Hearst arranged a huge New York parade celebrating her release, saying that his newspapers had freed this captive. And finally, a third source, Hearst didn't send cable to Remington, a letter to the editor in August 1991, referring to the 1923 story. Professor of Communications, Dom Bonmafide, says that American journalism is steeped in folklore and mythology, and that Hearst used this story as it was his common practice of yellow journalism. And he says the only evidence offered is Creelman's memoirs, the only evidence of the cable being sent to Cuba by Hearst, and historians continually repeat the story over and over and over. So I guess the only way we'll know if Hearst actually sent the cable is if some lucky historian actually finds the cable. Thank you.